Welcome back to the team room, everybody. It's me, it's Trent, it's Jay Dorleus. Jay, welcome. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Again, I think this is number two. Only
I
the
think
first
so.
time it was me and what's that? I'm not saying peaches. It's not happening.
you could you could just say chief. You could just say chief. It's all good. We call, I love how everybody, that's how the evolution goes, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him Chief, I'm gonna call him Jared, he's my J tag, and then after you know him for about 2 seconds, you're like, that's Peaches. Everybody's just like, I'm gonna call him Peaches. Jay, like, we
Uh,
know who you are. We talk all the time. Like, we have a great relationship. But for the folks out
yeah.
there that don't follow your channel and don't figure, like, haven't been paying attention to what you do, man, introduce yourself to our audience.
Of course, of course. Yeah. So, name is Jay Dorleus. Spent 20 years in the United States Army, five of it as a combat engineer, 12 Bravo, conducting route clearance throughout Iraq. First deployment was in '03. Second one was in 2007. After those two deployments, went to a selection, made selection, went through the Q course, finished the Q course. And then I was over at a 3rd Special Forces Group up here at Fort Bragg for about 13 years. Recently retired. It's been a year now. And since I retired, I started Green Beret Chronicles on YouTube with the intent of sharing my knowledge and experience with the next generation of Green Berets or soft soldiers, right? Because at the end of the day, we all know that some of the candidates that we see, they all have the same stuff, right? Some might be a little bit smarter and go towards the Air Force. Some might be a little bit dumber and go towards the Marine Corps. But at the end of the day, same type of dudes, right? But yeah, for the last year and a half now, man, I've been on YouTube just adding value and helping young men figure out what to do with their lives, whether it's, gravitating towards Air Force, so I send them to you guys, whether it's going towards the Navy, I'll send them to Jake, or whether they want to stay Army, I'll talk to them and provide as much value as I can. But for the last year and a half or so, that's what I've been doing.
Heard you've hurt the internet's feelings recently. Is that true? I've heard the feelings of the internet are hurt. That's what I heard on the street. I don't know.
The internet. Yeah, the internet's not a real place. The internet seems to have feelings, but it's not a real place. So
No, it's not. But so I also have the Beyond the Brave podcast on the channel, and what I try to do is bring on vets that's been there, that's done it, and they can just share their experience. Because the biggest takeaway that I want people to get from that podcast is, hey, there's a life after the Army, right? Beyond the Green Beret, there's a life. But I also like to do like exposed sessions, right, where guys want to talk about corruption, and because in my opinion, that's where change happens, right? Like we all know, like when we hit an objective and we do all this cool stuff, we get back to the team room. Like we don't give a shit about the good, right? Like you're supposed to clear that room. You're supposed to take that shot. But it's what went wrong that we focus on, because that's how we get better. So I think, we're in a time and space where, those hard conversations need to be had, and if I speak to another veteran that has something that he wants to share for the betterment of his community, then I'll do that, right? And I think it's funny because I'll read the comments sometimes and people are getting on me. It's like, dude, all I am is a platform. I'm a host, you know what I mean? Like Eric wanted to come on, so I brought him on. He said his piece. And then, the other side said their piece. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, what we want is face-to-face conversation. And if the other side wants to do that, they can. They chose not to. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? We all have our opinions, and this is America. This is what we fight for, is that freedom. So that's what took place, man. And a lot of people, so I would say it's 50-50, because you have the hardcore fanboys that are like, no way, I masturbate to this dude, right? And then you have the other side that are like, oh yeah, I can see that.
right.
But no one is, it's like the internet is this weird place where people hear stuff and they just hold on to it, and they
Mhm.
are pissed when something goes against it. And it's like, dude, there can be like, these guys can be deceptive, it can be false, right? Like, and that's okay. You just have to be open to it, right? So that's the gist behind that. But it's all good conversation all the way around, because if the, audience think that, like we're all, just great dudes and there's no bad apples, then they're not smart, right? Like it is what
Right.
it is.
It's such a weird thing to try to describe to somebody. We can have these conversations all the time. We have them in the Discord, we have them in our comment section or in the DMs. We tell people straight up, hey, we're normal dudes. We're regular humans. We had a really cool job. There's really cool training. A lot is expected of you. But douchebags make it through the pipeline. People go into these career fields and then make bad decisions with their management of alcohol, their management with their anger or violence issues. And some of the, sometimes people get through that really aren't good people, and they're able to be selected into these things because there's false negatives and false positives anywhere. And then when these stories come out, you try to have a transparent conversation because that only helps. The lionization of the soft community, the belief that everybody that is in special operations is some sort of warrior monk, unassailable, perfect in everything that they do, unable to do wrong, that does us more harm than good, because it puts up this false perception of who it is that we are. And then, you hit the nail on the head, but the internet forces you to choose a side, and then you have to dunk on the other side. So when you dare to put some truth out there and go, hey, this is my friend, he's going to come on the podcast, we're going to have these conversations. We've had a ton of guests on that we do not share the same ideological viewpoint in every single thing. There are guests that we've had on that I look back on and I go, well, if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have even had them on. But in the time and the context, it's important to have those conversations because that's part of the life. It's funny that you said that there's a life afterwards. There's a life before the Army. There's a life during the Army. There's life after the Army. And all of these things are much less pretty and much less packaged than one would assume going in. But you're doing the Lord's work to say it in that way by really, opening the curtain and saying, okay, well, if you want to do this, there's a lot of things that you're going to work with shitty teammates. You're going to work with people that get in trouble for things. You're going to work with people that, no kidding, commit real crimes. You're going to work for an organization that you might not agree with 100%. But the point is, do you want to serve enough to get over those things? Or is that a barrier to you getting in and you're having the conversation? So I guess I would ask, it's 50-50 positive or negative. You look at the comment section and really you're having that conversation, not for the 10% that are always going to agree with you and the 10% that are always going to hate you, but for that middle percent. So when you have that conversation with that middle 80% in there, what are the things that you're trying to get across to them when they see things like that?
So when they see that type of stuff, like I need them to understand that, look, like what you're getting yourself into, it's a difficult field, right? You're going to work with all sorts of individuals, like you mentioned earlier, from like the good, the bad, the ugly. I need them to understand that, hey, at the end of the day, those do exist, right? You're going to run across teammates that are awesome. You're going to run across teammates that are, not so good. But at the end of the day, you got to be willing to have those hard conversations, right? Like you got to be able to sit down with dudes and have those conversations, because if you don't, nothing's going to change, right? And I think, the social media realm is a different beast because soft, like when you think of soft, you think of quiet professionals, silent professionals, and all that stuff, right? However, those bad actors that we identify as, making it through the pipeline, they prey on that because now they're like, oh, like my community believes in the silent professional, the quiet professional mantra. So even though I was a dirtbag, I could come out here and inflate my ego and, do all these things and know that no one's going to come out and say anything about it, right? Because even though behind closed doors, they're pissed off, they're not going to come out and say, hey, wait a minute, like this is false, because everyone is scared of social media because it makes us look bad. And I get it to an extent, because the first thing I told my guests was, hey, like, let's figure out the end state. The end state here isn't going to be just to get on the platform and just talk about all this stuff. What is the end state? Okay, the end state is to have a conversation with the other side on the same platform. Okay, bet. So we'll end with that. We'll put out an invite and say, hey, this is how I feel, and bring the two parties together and have a conversation, because we want to be that example of, hey, there are things within the special operations community that's not right. And, if we're in the space, in the social media space, and we're talking about all this stuff, and there's things behind closed doors that aren't actually factual, like, and you're painting this picture and your community has an issue with it, hey man, like, let's have that conversation. Let's iron it out so we can show to the public that, yeah, we're just normal dudes. We have mistakes. We make mistakes, and this is how we handle it, right? But that particular community doesn't do that, and a lot of people say, well, why are you doing this now? Well, bitch, because I just retired. All right. For the last 20 years, I've been on the sideline just boiling and watching this develop. And now that I'm on here, I'm like, wait, man, like, and what the tipping point for me was when I'm getting on phones with young men, 18, 19, very influential boys, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do, and they're talking about going that route for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was fame. And I'm like, that's very dangerous when you have money and fame injected into the military. That's very dangerous. Anyway, politics, leadership, like, that's the wrong reason to want to do it, because these guys are going to do the wrong thing chasing fame, and that's going to get people killed, right? And I have a young son, like, all he wants to do is be like that, right? He gets all
Mm-hmm.
camered up with the Kevlar, and I'm looking at him, I'm like, holy shit, like, one day he's going to be of age to want to follow in my footstep. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And boy, do I want that. Do I want
Yeah.
that for him? Do I want him to lead this life? And I want to highlight something, because I've been hit on it, personally in DMs. The one message that really sticks in my head is like, hey, Aaron, you were in for 22 years. You didn't necessarily say, because I am the same thing as you. Like, I don't have a boss. I am now retired. I'll feel free
Yeah.
to speak freely as I so please on whatever platform that is that I want. And if I say something that makes you mad, hey, we'll have a talk about it. But, I've earned it, for whatever level it is you want to say. I could be the crappiest operator ever, but hey, man, made it through selection, made it through the pipeline. Here I am, after a retirement. But it's tough to look at people and go, well, this is a different context. When I was in, you don't talk out of school, you don't do these things, and then people get it screwed up, because then they'll hit me up, they'll be like, hey, why are you talking about this? Because I'll talk about whatever I want, because I'm
Mhm.
retired now, and because I think that there are problems, and while I was in, I was focused on doing the right thing and fixing those problems internally, and there isn't stuff that you don't talk about. But people get it screwed up now, because there's like mean accounts from supposed, I'll say supposed, because until they out themselves, like another SF mean page is like one of the
Yeah.
the sergeant majors of the freaking army in contention.
Yeah.
But like everybody assumes that, like, oh, everybody just has these talks behind closed doors, and the memes are exactly correct. Well, there's a reason that all those meme pages are anonymous, because those people don't want to get in trouble in the community for talking outside of school while they're still in. But 19-year-old kids, they don't understand that. They're like, I'm going to be a SEAL. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to have all of these, things for it. And it's dangerous. How do you combat that? What conversations are you having with these young men?
So it comes down to making sure that they understand that that's not the norm, right? And for the audience that's going to jump on there and say, well, they should know that's not the norm. No, that's not the case, right? Before the internet came around, like, we joined and then we figured it out as we went, right? We had idols that we looked up to within our ranks. Like, we emulated that dude. When I first showed up to group, I was like, oh, I want to be like that sergeant major. I want to be like that first sergeant, right? Now with the social media realm, like, guys are hitting me up and saying, hey, Jay, you inspired me. I want to be like you. Like, that's the space that we're in now. Guys are finding these people on social media that they think are outstanding dudes, and that's who they're trying to be like, right?
Does that freak you out when you get those
it
messages?
fucking
How does that
scares
make
me.
you feel? Right?
Yeah, because I'm like, dude, don't be like me. And
Holy shit, right.
That's why I try to, go above and beyond to make sure that they see all the faults in me, because I don't want to present myself as this individual that can do no wrong, right? So that's why I tell them, hey, when I was, a young fucking soldier, like, I did dumb shit, right? Like, I I got arrested for fighting with the cops. Like I used to fucking be a degenerate and, sneak into my, my fellow, soldiers fucking rooms and steal shit out of that fucking room. Like I told him, hey, I was doing all this shit after my first deployment. And it was like, till this day, 20 years later, like I sit back and I look back at my life and I'm like, or my career, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I made it. You know what I mean? Because I was such a messed up, young soldier going through the beginning part of my career due to, the first couple of deployments, seeing buddies get blown up, picking up body parts and all that shit, dealing with Rob Clarence. That didn't mess me up. That if I didn't get help, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But I try to paint the picture of make sure they understand, like, hey, don't be like me. Like, I'm not this perfect person. I made my mistake. And even once I got into group, I fed into the notion of what a special forces operator should be. And I started going down the wrong path of, the drug abuse, the steroids and all of that shit. I'm like, so don't, I did it. This is what came from it. Do better. Right. I don't present to them like, oh, I'm just this fucking all around badass that, walk on water, because once they get to the groups and they see that like no one's like that, then you're just going to be, outed as a fraud. Right. So I think as influencers on social media, we owe it to these guys to always put our best foot forward and keep it 110% as far as what we experience. Because then you'll set them up for success. Right. And if you're painting the wrong picture, these guys are going to take it and they're going to run with it and they're going to think that's the norm. And it's just going to end up to not only them getting killed, their buddies getting killed, and somebody else getting killed, right? And then when I look at it from that perspective, it's like, holy shit, my son could be the one that's coming home in a fucking body bag because these guys are seeing this shit on social media and they think that's the norm. You know what I mean? And I could have said something about it, because they follow me or they follow whoever. And that would have triggered them to maybe say, you know what? Like, I remember Jason about that. That's not the norm. Let me grab my balls and say something, because that's where the integrity, that's where the courage comes from, right? To make sure that this doesn't take place. And I'll end with this note, Aaron. At least for me, whenever I was in the teams, like every leader I had, even though there was some type of mentorship going on, bro, they still had a mission to accomplish, right? They still had a day-to-day schedule that they had to follow. My company sergeant majors, my battalion sergeant majors, the group sergeant majors, they were so busy. Even my team sergeant, they were so busy to where, yeah, they might sit down with you and find out what's going on and, write a counseling and try to get you on the straight path. But they didn't have time to commit to you like, maybe, like I'm able to if a young SF guy calls me, right? I can sit down and no shit mentor him and tell him, hey, man, like, I had an experience pretty similar. This is what I did. Or, hey, I got a buddy that I served with that had an experience similar to what you're going through right now. Let me put you in contact with. Like, I feel like there's no shit, a space where we as operators that's been there, that's done it on the Air Force side, the Army side, the Marine side, the Navy side, to actually mentor some of these guys and keep them from making the same mistakes that we've made. And that's the angle that I'm taking with it. And so far it's been working out pretty good.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot too. It's if you join thinking that special operations guys don't make mistakes, that is what you think it is, and you have to pretend like you never make mistakes, and you never feel anything, and you've never let your team down or anything like that. That just creates an environment where you're trying to hide what you are all the time, and all the things. Like it's not an environment for progress, right? And like that's going to harm the individual in the long run a lot more than just being open and honest. And also like the chasm between like a normal high school kid versus the supposedly perfect special operations guy that they see on Instagram. It's like, well, how could I ever do that? Like, it's like, oh, how come we can't recruit? It's like, well, we're telling these kids that these people joined, they never struggled through their NDOC or buds or whatever it is, like, of course I went in there and I crushed it. You just have to have these 3 truths in the back of your mind.
You could do this too. Just know your why. Get the fuck out of here, man. That's not how it works.
2,000 push-ups before you join. It's like that. No, we were all highly, flawed individuals with physical weaknesses. and psychological weaknesses that we had to overcome to make it to where we are today. And we're still in that same process, right? And so, but like, it's just all these things that can go wrong. And then you end up with a egotistical commander trying to do things for the wrong reason. Like you said, people are going to die. And so I think like people like you, like, and I don't want to say people like us, but like I'm going to, people like us trying to like promote the next generation of military influencers, right? And that sounds so cringy when I say it out loud.
It does, yeah.
Military influencers. But like, hey, no, here's the professional part of it. And part of being professional is owning up to your mistakes and realizing that you're just a human just like everybody else.
Yeah, and to your point, Trent, I think it's a double-edged sword, because looking back at my life, like when I was thinking of joining the military, I was in no fucking position to go to special operations.
You weren't even an American citizen. Like you had barely got to America, Jay. Like,
dude, had social media been as prevalent as it is now,
you'd have never got in. You'd have waited. You'd have been like, I'm not ready. I gotta wait.
Never.
Yeah.
Like I would have jumped on there and I would have seen some fucking, Captain America looking dude, and I would have been like, this is like, I'm never gonna make this. I don't have a fucking choice. Like I don't have a chance. I literally would have self-selected myself right then and there. And I think that's the bad side of the social media space. Yes, you get all the information and all of that, but it probably deters a lot of fucking guys when dudes are out there presenting themselves as, these perfect fucking specimens.
Man, let me just rant about PA. Army has the same problem as the Air Force does, right? And we already hit on it. When you see all these slick videos of all these dudes that are doing this thing, and you're just totally ready to be like, oh heck yeah, this is fantastic, I'm gonna go do this thing. Who are you looking at on those videos? You're looking at a fully formed operator that's probably 27 or older. He's got his life in order. They've probably got a whole bunch of stuff behind him already. You're showing videos to these 17-year-old kids. You know who you should be showing? Dudes at selection. Dudes that are just barely out of the pipeline. Brand new kids that are doing stuff for the first time. That's who those people are going to connect with. The PA folks got this completely backwards. They're like, oh, we're going to show, these dudes jumping free fall, and that's going to get everybody in. How many free fall teams are there in the Army? What's the likelihood of you getting out of school and going directly to a free fall team? What's the likelihood of you doing that jump in the next 2 years? 0. That's what the likelihood is, fucking 0. But that's the package that we sell people. And, I was guilty of it as well. Trent and I, when we were in, we would get asked to do videos or give speeches or whatever. And, I'm standing in front of people as an E7 with 5 or 6 deployments and, combat missions and civilian saves and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, you could do it. The 15-year-old is looking at me like, I couldn't be any more different than this idiot. You know what I mean? Like, and rightfully so. Who they should be talking to is people in basic training. But the Army and the Air Force does the same thing. It's like, if you're a student in the pipeline or if you're brand new, no, you can't possibly hear the truth from those people. Like we have to have messaging, and we have to have the leaders get up and talk. And it's just the most ridiculous thing. I think that's probably why I know you get pushback from your community. Like, you've gotten messages, we've talked about it. So have we. But that's what we try to explain to people. They're like, oh, well, you guys brought a student on. That's not appropriate. But like, it's the most appropriate that it possibly could be. Like, there's nobody better to bring on than somebody in the peer group that's midstream going through what they're trying to go through. And they're going to look at him and go, no, dude, it sucks every day. I don't know how these guys do it, but here I am. I just keep waking up and I don't quit. And here I am. It's a wild thing.
My life again. But people do connect with that. Like, we've been doing this for a while, right? The videos of guys puking and dying and telling everybody how horrible it is, or us even just like being like, this dude is having the worst day of his life today. But if he wakes up tomorrow and he doesn't quit, he's going to make it. Like that sells to, I think, the correct audience. Not like, I'm going to go shoot people in the face and write a book and I'm going to go to Hollywood. Like, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, man, like what I've noticed from my personal research and just from speaking with dudes, a lot of guys are afraid to share that the journey that they took to get to where they are now. They're afraid to share like their entire Instagram storylines because it paints them as being just a regular dude, right?
God forbid.
They rather show the end product of oh, I was born like this, you know what I mean? As opposed to showing their little scrawny fucking chest and their, you know, their glasses and their down to earth. And like, that's what the audience that we're trying to get to can relate to. So that's what you need to do. But a lot of these guys don't want to show any imperfections because they're afraid that whatever they built might get destroyed when they see them as just a regular dude. And I'm like, well, that's just fucking insecurity. You know what I mean? And it just blows my mind, man.
I think some dudes legit forget. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we're in a community that looks back a lot, and it can be hard, especially like if you're in the throes of your career and you just come off team, right? And you become an instructor, and we talk about this too. And like you show up and you're like, how come these students suck so bad? Like you've lost your frame of reference for the person that you were on day one. Like a lot of these dudes, I don't even think they think about it. It's not something that they like think about. Like, hey, I need to go back and remember how I was on day one so that I can, you know, meet these people where they're at and to take them along their journey to getting a beret or whatever else that they're trying to get. And I think you just get used to just being who you are. I just don't, maybe there's just not a lot of like deep thinkers, or like maybe it is uncomfortable. Maybe they thought about it once. They're like, actually, I don't want to remember that. Like I wanted to quit 6 times. Like if my buddies hadn't talked me out of it, I wouldn't be here. Like that's super embarrassing, but it's like, no, that's everybody.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm gonna share this little story. So I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was talking about one of these more popular influencers out there, and he was telling me, "Hey, this," and he got upset because he served with that guy, and you know, like he's venting. He was like, "Look at this fucking dude. He's over here presenting himself as like Captain America, but what he's not telling people is, yeah, you're a sniper, but you failed sniper school fucking 3 times. Like, why aren't you sharing that?" And I'm like, you know what? Like,
that's the more valuable part of the story. I don't care about your fucking qual, man. Tell us how you got through the course.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Somewhere out there, there's a fucking SF dude that just failed sniper school, and he thinks his world is over. He think that's it for him. And hearing that from that dude would have gave him what he needed to get over it. Instead, he's hearing how this dude took the longest shot and killed, you know, a bunch of people. And I'm like, that shit doesn't fucking matter.
It's not the most important part of the story. Right.
Exactly. It's that selfish fucking service. And I'm like, dude, had he got up there and humbled himself and said, you know what, you know, yeah, I took this shot and, you know, I'm very proud of it. However, I didn't become this sniper, you know, by not, you know, learning all of this. Some of this shit took me a while to learn. Like I went to sniper school 3 times, you know, and that's where the teaching aspect of it comes in. Like, holy shit, you know, somewhere out there, and I know it happens because I was in sniper school with dudes that failed, right? And I'm like, those dudes, especially when your team only has 1 slot and you get it, like you think your fucking world is over. It's horrible, you know, and some of those dudes never bounce back from it, you know, and I'm like, you're out here. Had you share the failures about how you went 3 fucking times, that would have helped somebody out there. Instead, you're beating your chest on how bad of a sniper you are. And I'm like, bro, I hope that makes you feel good. You know what I mean? And
right.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? To each their own. But I personally don't watch any of that shit because it just enraged me because I'm like, what's the end state? Like, what are you trying to do? Because you're not helping. Yeah, you're not helping anybody. You're just, you know, making yourself to be, you know, like a badass. And it's like, bro, at the end of the day, no one cares, especially from our community. Like, no one cares, but you're trying to, you know, promote a brand and do whatever. But I guess we're in a different space. But as I watch that stuff, what I can think of is, man, you are missing an opportunity to change not only the special operations community, but the country, right? Because the way I look at it, like, you know, as a military, like, we pride ourselves in making strong men, right? Used to, at least. Like, we're still working on it. But typically, the men that come out of the military, like, we stand for certain things, right? And if you can help the people in the military get better mentally by you sharing your story, or even convince younger individuals to join, based on, whatever platform you have, and you're showing these guys that you're a human being and that you had challenges, you had adversities, and you went through it, and you became this person. Now you're motivating them to go through the process. They're going to come out better, and that's going to make society better. That's going to make the country better. And it's like everybody's winning. You know what I mean? But some
Right.
guys just have the wrong blueprint, in my opinion.
Well, and it's tough for them to get there again, because you don't want to talk about your failures. You do this thing, and speaking from experience here on social media, is you want to have this kind of impenetrable aura or this presentation of yourself, because you want people to take your experience as a subject matter expert. Trent and I, struggle with this all the time. It's like, we are self-deprecating. We are going to tell you, we don't talk about war stories of the good things that we've done here. You hit the nail on the head perfectly. You get done with an operation, nobody gives a shit how good you did. We're not going to talk about that. We don't even need to fix it. We need to fix the bad stuff. If you go back and read Leadership and Training for the Fight, Master Sergeant Paul Howe, it was an amazing book. He's a Delta Force operator. He was talking about, I believe they were in Iraq. They went on a mission. They got inserted onto the wrong rooftop. They actually almost had a blue on blue, where a young Delta Force operator saw people running on a rooftop where they shouldn't be. They were approaching the team, and the guy took shots at them. Okay, so from one roof to another. They go through a big debrief process, and in the debrief process, the mission went well. Everything was perfect, except for the fact that they almost had a blue on blue. And you know what the counseling was for that young Delta operator? I can't believe you missed that shot. It was 75 meters away on a rooftop. You thought the team was in trouble, and you didn't kill the thing that you were shooting at. That guy got counseled, because if that was an insurgent, he just lost that member of his team. That's done. And that was like, that's a great sort of dichotomy. When I first read that, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to get yelled at for almost shooting his buddy and not PIDing. No, he got counseled for not hitting a shot that he should have hit, because that's your primary duty. When people start to understand that that's how we look at things, it's a little bit different for, like, they have a hard time grasping, like, oh, okay, well, so then you're not this perfect thing on social media. Then you have gotten to where you are by every single thing that you've ever done wrong has been hyper focused on and brought to your attention in front of your peers. We're trying to prepare people for that. And it's not like, there's no such thing as hitting a home run and going back to the team room and being like, oh, nothing to talk about. We did perfect today. If you did that, you're on a team that's about to experience a serious catastrophic loss. Like, I'll just tell you straight up.
Yeah, it's only if it's your first home run, and then you owe a case of beer, and then no one talks about it ever again. That's it.
Right. Yeah, nobody cares. Yeah, throw beer in the fridge, newbie. I don't really give a shit how good you felt about that one. You did a million things wrong, but buy your case of beer. Congratulations. You did it. Take the trash out. So, as you engage with these folks, we talk about, trying to raise the next generation of humble warriors, regardless of service, right? Like, we know the Air Force is better. You're doing a great job, and you're trying hard. But as we have the same thing. I had a great commander, FR. He listens to the podcast. What's up, FR? He had a great statement about mentorship. He was like, listen, people will tell you that you can, span of influence is 12 people, span of control is 200. That's why special forces teams are 12 to 24 big. And that's why battalions are about 200 big, like blah, 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 whatever. He's like, listen, that's bullshit. He was like, think about yourself in these terms. He's like, how many people can you really pour mentorship into? How many people can you really care day to day about making the best possible person? He's like, really, it's like 1 or 2 people. If you're adept, you can get to like 3 people that you're really trying to help. Our umbrellas are a lot bigger. We talk to a lot more folks. How do you communicate that distilled message down to the folks that you're talking to day to day to help them understand the journey they're about to take?
Well, I do my best to make sure that I embed it in whatever piece of information that I'm putting out on social media, because not a lot of guys are going to pick up the phone and book a session, right? And I understand that. So I do the best that I can to just put the message in whatever piece of content that I'm putting out there. Whether it's, a short or, like a 5 to 7 minute segment. And I try to cover everything that I know, everything that I think that these guys are going to experience and have a question about. So, and then I encourage those that's been there, that's done it, to also respond in the comment sections to hopefully help that guy out that isn't going to be as overt about, his shortcomings, right? Because we all know those guys exist, especially within our community. Like, they're not going to raise their hand and say, hey, I need help, right? They just are going up. get the information wherever they can get it. So if they don't call and get on a session with me, then as I create my videos, I'll try to think of them. Like I have a really clear picture as far as who my audience is, and I try to put as much information in that as possible to hopefully serve them. And if they don't get it and they eventually get to the point, they can jump on a phone call with me. I also have the Discord that they can jump on and talk to other guys that's been there, that's done it. Because I know the information is not as relevant as far as some of the physical stuff from when I went through, like 15 years ago. So I have newer guys in there that just went through it that can share that information. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted you to say I went back when it was hard. I went through when it was hard.
Well, when I went through, it was 2 weeks long, and yes, it was fucking hard because it was those experiment, like 2 weeks in hell experiment, like the documentary that's out there, 2 weeks in hell. It was 3 classes removed from the one that I went through, and I went to the 2-week one thinking that it was going to be easier because I'm like, oh, I can do anything for 2 weeks. Like that was my.
No, you cannot.
Now that was my fucking mindset, but what they did was they kept the POI the same, and they just crammed it into 2 weeks, and they just took away like downtime,
like so sleep and food and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like fucking back to back to back, and I was like, Jesus Christ! And then the following, like a couple of classes later, they went back to 3 weeks because they weren't getting the numbers that they thought they were going to get by shortening the course. So yeah, I went back when it was hard. So.
Nice.
Yes. How do you manage like expectations of these folks? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes around, and I think that this is a huge, we've already talked about it today. It's like, how do you manage their expectations, and where should they be focusing their expectations as they take their first steps to get one of these jobs?
Yeah. So whenever I speak to, young men, I try to be understanding because again, I'm on the back end of it, 20 years later, and my patience is not where it needs to be, especially when it comes to, guys victimizing themselves or feeling sorry for themselves. Like I don't have the patience for it, but then I have to remind myself like, hey, this is a new generation of individuals. And the fact that they want to serve and go down this route, that I respect. So I always just tell them before you go, just understand that, like you're trying out for, special operations. You're trying to become, the top 1% of the 1%, right? So if you're calling me and you're asking me, hey, how do I improve my pull-ups and you can't even do one right now, or hey, I can't do 50 push-ups, but I'm like, dude, so why are you even thinking about special operations? Like, don't
right.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, guys are calling me and they're asking me about selection, and they can't even do push-ups. I'm like, well, don't worry about selection.
Yeah. Bro, you don't have a checking account. How about you figure out how to pay your rent? How about that? I mean? So how about go get a job?
Yeah, so I don't get to the point where I, crush their dream, but I put things in perspective, right? Because I'm very like reality focused. I'm like, well, this is your reality right now. You want to go to special operations. I understand that, but don't put the cart before the horse, right? So what you need to do is X, Y, and Z. And I lay it out for them, right? Like, take it in small increments. If you want to go to special operations and you're in fucking, high school, I'm like, great. Don't worry about special operations. You might get to a point where you can even join the Army. You know what I mean? So focus on the 10-meter target, right? Get through high school. Right? Once that's done, talk to your mom and dad, figure out what's going on. And then if you still want to join, find a recruiter, right? Once you're done with that, figure out if the 18 extra contract is even available, right? So I teach them to systematically take things like one step at a time, because if they try to eat that whole fucking shit sandwich, it has a way of just destroying them before they start, right? If they are thinking about crushing selection and they're not even fucking done with high school yet, you know what I mean? I'm like, bro, like, don't do it like that. Just take it one step at a time. Yeah, have the goal in mind, but you need to understand you need to, like have a path, lay out a path to get to that end state. And just understand you're going to have adversity along the way. You know what I mean? Like you're going to have obstacles along the way. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? So I try to mentor them in that capacity to make sure that they understand, like, you have to take it one step at a time, because we all know once you get done with selection and you go through the Q course, ours is, anywhere from a year to 2 years long. Right? It's a long, drawn out process. Now you got to go endure that. And if you try to, if a lot of guys will start worrying about the Q course before they even go to selection. I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing, man? Like, stay in the moment.
Yeah. I love when people ask us pre-dive questions. They're like, hey, I'm getting really good at all these pre-dive exercises. I'm like, well, tight. What happens when you don't get selected? What happens when you don't make it? What happens when you don't make it to pre-dive? Like, you have middling IFT numbers. Like, a lot of the things that I'm seeing right now, like, and I'll tell you what, like, I failed on it. Like, I started off way more like you. I'm like, people would send me a DM and I'm like, hey, just from reading your DM, you're probably not going to make it. And you're probably going to quit. You should probably think about something else. Like, and I get it. That's not what people, that's not the best way to handle that. But it's walking that fine line, because on the other side of the coin are these people that are, they have every number that you're looking for. They've got everything. And they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do CIA or if I want to do FBI, HRT. I'm like, meanwhile, you're a finance bro and you haven't done step one either. Like those, the wasted potential is one of the focus groups that just makes me the most mad now. Now I see people that DM like, I've been training for a year and my IFT numbers are through the roof, but I read this news article about possible 5th generation warfare and I was hoping to get more cyber out of SR. So I don't know if I'm going to push the button. I'm like, oh my God, you're almost as annoying as the guy that can't do one pull-up talking about being a PJ in 8 months. Like, equally, you guys have the exact same chance at going forward.
So what I started doing, because when I first started, I was answering like anything and everything, like DMs and all that shit. And then I quickly realized there's a lot of fucking tire kickers out there. Like, they just want to waste my time and they're not actually serious about any of it. Right. So I filtered through all that shit and I'm like, if you want to get in touch with me, then I need you to invest. Right. I need you to invest in yourself, whether it's the fucking $19.99 for the Discord or getting on a call with me. Like, I need you to want to do it first, as opposed to just expecting me to just give you all of my time. And that's what I did for the first year. And out of all the individuals that I spoke with, maybe 5 of them actually joined the Army and went that route. You know what I mean? The remainder of the 100 plus, I was like, well, I'm never going to get that time back. You know what I mean? So now I almost get to the point where I force them to commit. You know what I mean? I'm like, bro, like, I'm not going to invest all this time in you and take it from somebody else that can actually use it and do something with themselves and just give it to you for free. And you're just wasting my time. You just want to, feel good about yourself for whatever reason. Right. So now I get to the point where I don't even deal with any of that anymore. So I'm like, if you're interested, watch all the free content. And then once you get really interested, commit. Right. And I always tell guys, especially when I speak with them, and I can tell, like, when I'm on a phone call with these guys and they're finding excuses, I'm like, well, you paid your fee, so I'm going to speak with you. And then I tell them, this isn't going to be real until you make it, right? Like, until you make it real and actually go to the recruiting station and sign that contract, like, you're going to be right here just spinning your wheels. So I'm like, if you want to make it real, go to the fucking recruiting station, sign a contract. Now you don't have a choice but to get your shit together. Right? I want to get in shape. I want to do this, but I don't know. I'm like, I tell you what, man, as soon as you sign that contract and you're binded to it, like, that's going to force you to get out of bed and go fucking run. Right? That's how you need to do it. If you don't do it like that, you're just wasting your time.
So the paint yourself into a corner strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate.
Yeah.
I usually ghost people if they ask me stupid questions. I'm like, like, they're like, I can see that he read my message. I'm like, yeah, but no.
Yeah. What if I was to tell you that your message does not deserve a response? Yeah. I do like the commitment aspect of it. It is a big thing that we see as well, and tire kickers is a great way to put it. We had a close friend of ours that was a PJ that ended up going to be a special operations recruiter. And I had a conversation with him kind of after like 2 years when he was doing the recruiting gig. And I was like, hey brother, man, what have you learned? He was like, you know what I learned? I learned to tell people no way earlier.
Yeah.
I got into this game and I started thinking like, how can I get everybody in the door? And then I realized about 90% of those people aren't even going to qualify. And it's not even worth my time to talk to those, 90% of those people, because they don't even meet the standards. So you know
Yeah.
what I do when I walk in, I look at them and I go, can you meet this standard? Nope. Okay, cool. Get out. We can't continue to
Yeah.
talk. I have a checklist. Can you meet this standard? Can you meet this standard? Like, I'm trying to tell him no. And when I get to the end of the algorithm, I go, oh, wait a second. You actually might qualify for this. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about have these next things. Do you think that it's a younger generation problem, a problem with entitlement when they come to you and they're just like, hey, fix all my problems? Or do you think it's just the social media space?
This one is interesting because the more I get, involved in the mentoring, especially with these younger kids, the more I realize that men just aren't what they used to be. As far as the fathers in the household, the older brothers, the uncles, it's like it damn near doesn't exist anymore. Like rarely, like will I, meet a guy that has all the qualities that we probably had as a young man. That shit doesn't exist anymore, man. It is fucking scary because some of the questions, some of these guys are asking me, like I'm thinking to myself, like, where's your father? Like, why are you asking me this? You know what I mean? And I'm seeing more and more of that, and I think it pays tribute to what a lot of people have been saying as far as this generation just being just weak, and it comes from, in my opinion, the household. Because if you have a weak man in the house, your son's gonna end up fucking weak, right? And I don't fault them because they're doing the best that they can by reaching out to people like us to try to better themselves. But I think it's a product of just men just being weak because like I have like an analogy that I like to use because like when my son sees me, and he's 6 and he sees me, like in the gym working out or whatever, guess what he does? He comes out and he works out with me. So that is slowly training him like this is the norm, right? So when you're in the household and you look like a piece of shit and your son sees you at a very young age looking like a piece of shit, he's going to think that's the norm. And he's going to grow up, to be that person. And then he's going to see us on social media and he's going to want to be like us. And then he's going to start asking those questions and trying to do the things that you as a father should have been teaching him at a young age. And I see a lot of that, man. And I think that's what caused it because the fathers aren't being fathers and they're not instilling certain things in their kids. They're not making them put the remotes down and go outside and play. They're not making them run. They're not making them go to PE. They're not making them do anything. They're just letting them grow up as just these weak minded individuals, mentally and physically, right? And then they get to the point where they want to do something like this, and some of them can't because of their upbringing. So that's what I chop it up to.
It's not just the kids. You see that thing where the congressman was like, "Hey, it's not the military's job to make sure that your spouses have jobs." You guys see that? Like all the blowback, and like people that are like our age or older that are like, "Well, this is why we can't recruit because we're not taking care of our people because the big daddy military isn't making sure that everybody's spouse or all these other things have jobs and can do all these other things." I'm like, when did we become the military where everything in my life needs to be taken care of by my employer? Like, it's insane. Like
Yeah.
like all these people are like, this is the problem. Like, they're not taking care of the military folks. And I'm like, no. Where do these people come from where you expect all of these things? I don't know where that mentality came from, that whole victim vet, all this self-victimization and infantilization of all of these grown-ups that are supposed to be defending our country, but somehow like their spouses can't get a job and that's all the rest of our problem.
Right.
They want to create another program and process to make sure that everybody has a job. Like it's insanity.
Yeah, it's that entitlement mindset, and it's spreading like fucking wildfire. And it could well, it's gonna have to change as soon as people start owning up for that shit. You know what I mean? Hopefully, it happens sooner than later.
Yeah, agree. So we talked about the younger generation and the way that we communicate on the internet. We obviously share like some of those same consternations, some of those same frustrations. But you and I, Trent, Peaches, myself, I know you don't want to call them Peaches. And I think to every degree, these meme influencers, if you want to call them that, I think we all have one thing in common. And it's, although we see everything for the bad, we also see in this generation, they have the distinct capability and possibility to be absolutely fucking great.
Yeah.
Like when I see these young men that are graduating from the pararescue pipeline, every time I see them stand up, put their beret on, blouse their boots, and say the motto at the top of their, top of their lungs, man, it gives me hope for the future. And working with and seeing those young folks, man, I know you have that same feeling. It's why you devote your life to helping them succeed. What do you think is the impetus to get them there? So if like we see they have that potential, we know that they're capable of doing these things. What would you tell those folks? Like, hey, listen up, fuckheads, school circle on me. You have a potential inside of you that you haven't realized. You need to start your journey. What would you tell those folks?
Like, I would just be honest with them and make sure they understand, like, I didn't start off by being like this. Like, we all have a genesis to our, life. Like, mine started, 20 years ago, some fucking bonehead kid from Brooklyn that has no business being where I'm at right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I tell him it to him in that manner because I want to be able to relate to him. Right. I want to show him that, hey, I did it, coming from fucking, Haiti, got to the US at the age of 10, couldn't speak English, bullied in high school, well, not high school, I fight by then, bullied in middle school, in junior high school, and, joined the military and became a citizen. And like, I went through my trials and tribulations to get to the point where I'm at right now. And if I was able to do it, then you don't have an excuse, especially if you're born here, right? You don't have an excuse to not be able to do it, right? So I want to make sure I relate to them in that matter and make them understand that, hey, I didn't wake up one morning and, look the way that I looked, right? I used to be skinny as fuck, you know what I mean? But I, right. But I hit the gym every fucking day,
There's no super soldier serum, guys. You don't get to your first unit. They don't just hit you with an injection. They're like, now you're 220 and good looking. Yeah. Like, it's not how it works.
Like, I was looking at some old pictures of myself, and I know shit looked like Captain America pre-serum. Like, that's how skinny I used to be, right? And it's weird because everybody in my family were just tall and lanky. So I'm like, dude, like I literally would work out for 3 hours on end because I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, that was my dude. So it's like there's a process that you have to go through to get to the end state that you desire, and it's not going to be easy. It's never easy. And I would also encourage them to to keep social media at bay, because social media shows you the end product, but most of the time it doesn't show you the journey, right? Guys just get on their stories or whatever and just post cool guy shit. And, like, the younger generation sees it and they want it to happen just like that, right? And I would put things in perspective for them and let them know that that's not how the world works, right? If you want to become this individual that Trent is, that Aaron is, that I am, that Peaches is, like, you got to understand that those guys went through a lot of adversity, a lot of trauma, right? And we're the lucky ones. Like, we were able to overcome it and come out on the back end, right? And we still have shit. I still have shit that I'm dealing with, and I would make sure that they understand that what they see on social media isn't necessarily the truth, right? Like, understand that there's always something behind the individual that you're looking at, whether it's the PTSD and all this other shit, right? Social media has a way of just showing people the end product, and a lot of kids take that and they try to become that, and along the way, as soon as they get hit with that humble pie, they quit, right? So I was just trying to paint the picture for them and let them know that, hey, there's gonna be hurdles to get to where you're trying to get, and when you do hit it, you just got to keep pushing through it.
Amen, brother. Don't come here for no bullshit. Don't come to One's Ready. Don't go to Green Beret Chronicles looking for like, we're going to give you the actual real talk. So everybody knows where they can find us, Jay. I'm looking at your website. It's got everything that you could possibly need. green-beret-chronicles.webflow.io. We'll make sure to link it in there. Where can everybody find you and tell us how they can get in touch with you if you're looking to go special forces?
Yeah, so like Aaron mentioned, greenberetchronicles.com is the website where you can find me. On there, I have link to the Patreon and also to the Discord. And then Instagram is greenberetchronicles.com, just Green Beret Chronicles. And that's all I have. I don't do TikTok because I just can't do it, man. I've tried.
That's over it, dude. I need another social media account. Like I need a hole in my head. I'll tell you that much. So we're not on TikTok either. But Jay, obviously, man, thanks. We love you. You come on whenever it is that you want. We're happy to collab with whatever. Jay's doing good work to get you into Army Special Forces out there. So check him out over on greenberetchronicles.com and over on his YouTube channel. Make sure to leave a comment. We appreciate you guys following Jay and ourselves. If you need to go to the Army, if you've just run out of options and the Air Force won't take you, head over to Jay. He's got a good program. Come on over, baby. But if you're smart and you don't want to have to deal with that stuff, you can hit us up at onesready.com. But it's all jokes, but this is the community. If you want real talk, you know where to find it. So Jay, we appreciate it. Keep crushing, brother.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time. Everybody else out there, train hard.
Later.